The office of the Prime Minister is yet again in the spotlight of allegations of supplying substandard food relief and misappropriation of funds meant to help vulnerable Ugandans suffering the negative effects of COVID-19. Already, 4 officials are on remand on claims that they inflated prices for posho and beans donated in Kampala and Wakiso. Yesterday, government announced the termination of contract of businessman Apolonye Gamahe, commonly known as Aponye, for supplying substandard food. So, is government stealing from its people that have been subjected to another 21 days of lockdown? To discuss this and more, we host the Honorable Musa Echweru, the State Minister for Relief and Disaster Preparedness, and Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, Member of Parliament for Kampala Central. Welcome, and thank you very much for having responded to our invitation. We thank you for coming in, and I must tell you that Uganda is waiting and ready to listen to you, and the spotlight is on the 2 of you gentlemen. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me begin with you, Honorable Musa Echweru. Yesterday, you distributed, or not yesterday, but for some time you have distributed food to some people in Kampala, and there are complaints already that the food you are distributing to them is not fit for human consumption. You know, you are trying to save people from the effects of COVID-19, but you want to kill them with contaminated food. Does it make sense?
I am not sure whether that is accurate, that people are saying the food is not fit for human consumption. What I know, though, is that first I am glad that the government of Uganda, under the leadership of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, in its wisdom, saw it fit to support the very vulnerable communities, particularly in Kampala, Wakiso, and parts of Mukono. It is also true that we have invited very many people of goodwill to support this effort. And I am extremely...
The intent is not being
Yes,
opposed here.
yes, yeah,
We are
so-
talking
so
about the actual delivery of food and what you are giving to them. Because there are complaints that the food you have given them, in some instances, is not fit for human consumption. That is my question, Honorable
No,
Chair.
there are just 2 areas. For example, if you look at what they say about some beans that belong to a particular company, it had never gone out of our stores. What we did precisely was to invite scientists from UNBS and NARO to look at that food before it was taken to the target groups. And the moment they indicated to us that this food was not good, it was rejected from our stores, not from the population.
Can you hold
Yes.
there? Because
Yes.
there's a pendulum shift in your talk. Because one day you'll be saying this, and another day you're saying another. I just want to use your own words. Because you were giving them a clean bill of health, the food that you had in your stores. That's good. Let me refresh your mind by what you said a couple of days ago. Please, let me have this played.
Fortunately for us, we mark every person, the bags are marked. And when we look at the beans supplied by Aponye, we know they may not be first-class beans. That is a fact, you can see. But there is not anything that is like stones in this bean.
There's nothing like foreign particles, like stones in these beans. Yes. This is what you're saying. And then 2 days later, you're saying, no, these beans are not good for human consumption. Why do you have a pendulum shift in 2 days?
Kamara, listen, let me let the country know. Some of our business people are very shrewd. We had a truck carrying 100 metric tons. And 1 container had this kind of beans I'm describing. Probably from an old stock, but clean. And even from our scientists, they have indicated that yes, these 50 metric tons or so are clean and can be consumed. 1 container from the truck had beans that were compromised in terms of quality. So what they did was they had sampled the first one and showed us. And I was with the Right Honorable Prime Minister in the store and other leaders. When we checked, we said, okay, as far as we are concerned, from our own eyes, we can see that these beans may not be first class. And this is what I have precisely said there. they may not be qualified to be first class. But we don't see the kind of foreign materials that we were made to believe was in this. But on opening the other container, that was found, and that provoked us again to say, you scientists...
Who is doing the sampling?
Who does the sampling?
Yes.
The sampling is done, of course, when the owner... What happens sometimes, UNBS goes and checks these things in the stores of the suppliers. Say, for example, Mohammed Nsereko indicates to us that I have beans, I have posho. If the quantities are big, we can send scientists there.
Is it you to say these beans are good or not? Is that your job?
It is the scientists.
Then why are you telling Ugandans these are bad or these are good? It's not your job even.
These 50 had been cleared by the scientists. They said these are good. The same scientists said that container that we showed you apparently was good, but the other one is bad. So we don't.
But you know what? The
Yes.
contamination of the beans did not even have to take a scientist to tell you, because some of them, they were actually having stones that a naked eye for any other Ugandan, even a local Utoro in Kenya, you can know that these beans.
Kamara, you can't see that in a container. You can't see that in the sacks until you open up that container, until you check with your naked eyes. Then, for example, I want to give you, there is a donor who, for example, sent some maize flour. So that maize flour a sample was brought to me, another person. On opening it, I could feel the pungent stench from this flour. I asked this, as far as I'm concerned, what is this for? It can't be for our, that is a donation. No, even a donation there is a standard. So we rejected that one. Later on, that donor apparently contracted another organization, which organization did a dubious job. And the good news is that he withdrew all that he has, and they have replaced it.
So you have rejected 21 metric tons of
We
beans.
have.
By the way, and this is like 21,000 kgs.
That's very true.
This is what you had received thinking it's okay. 21,000 kilograms.
That's true. That's what
Who receives 21,000 kilograms of contaminated food?
in a we can, like you must have heard at one point, we had trailers. Food is very delicate, Dugu Kamara, and the listeners out there. From expert experience, we are told, if, for example, you move maize flour in a container which leaks, and it rains on that container, it is likely to go bad.
Okay, let me refresh your mind again, because after saying this food may not be good, but it's okay,
Yes.
and this is what you said again.
Yes.
But I can tell you, the first one is Aponye. I don't want to hide that. The first one was Aponye, had some challenges, and theirs was not so much to do with the toxicity. You know, my chemistry is a little pedestrian. But what happened was, his food was found to have some foreign materials, say like the beans were not cleaned, and so they were told to go, if they want to reapply, they must go and clean their beans so that they meet the standards. So that was so that's the one I can easily remember, but it's not that it was maybe chemically harmful, but it was not clean. That's what they indicated to me.
Whereas maybe this is a good sound on tape that you are talking about, which has been captured. My problem is you're shifting every moment, and I wonder what you're going even to say tomorrow.
No, a minister like me is guided by technical people. If scientists from NARO and UNBS come and say this is good food for consumption, who am I to say no? If they come and say this is clean, but the problem is, I mean, this is not harmful in as far as it has no chemicals, it is not contaminated, but the problem is mixed with some dirt. It needs a bit of cleaning. We have no choice but to remind the owner that just go and make sure that you meet the standard, minimum standard. Okay,
let me turn to Honorable Mohammed Nsereko. You represent the people of Kampala, here right where we are. Kampala also has its own peri-urban poor, people in Kisenyi, people in Kamocha. I wonder what they are telling you, and I wonder what you as their member of parliament, you're doing for them, or even fighting for them in your places and your platforms.
First of all, immediately this lockdown proposed by government began, I warned of the following. One, that there will be a lot of anxiety. Secondly, that there would be a lot of hunger and anger. Two things, hunger and anger, and these move together.
That's true.
So when many people approached me and they told me, look here, Honorable, help us and give us something to eat, I preferred to give these people rice and beans and some others peas. I marshaled up some rice to the tune of about 100 million, tried to give the people I could. Some was delivered to the people door in door, but when I appeared on the scene as an individual, goodness me, there is this magic in food that you will never understand. The moment I appeared, a queue of people lined up, just like you saw in Kenya today, in Kibera. When I appeared in Kamwocha, thousands of people queued up. And what was the signal? That indeed there was hunger. People had taken about 9 days without working. These are people that live from food, hand to mouth. Matatu drivers, special hire drivers, boda drivers,
Daily wages.
Riders, daily wages. We can say people that work in saloons, to mention but a few. So these are the people that were vulnerable during this situation. They are not necessarily poor, but they are vulnerable. Now, when we start another round of lockup for another 21 days, now everyone becomes vulnerable. I can tell you, there are few Ugandans that have savings that can take them for at least 45 days as families. Children had been returned from school, but all that history we can talk about. And I came to Parliament. I remember when the Honorable Chair was there. And I told him, this discriminative process of giving out food, now everyone is vulnerable. And people are not sure as to whether this government will continue to extend the lockdown. Before we know, now we are going for another 21 days. Now, if they were starving within 14 days, what will happen within the rest of the 21? That is for you and I to answer. Now, we are treating the aftermath of who was contracted, what they would give. First, we had proposed in Parliament. Some members of Parliament came up with proposals of saying, can you identify these people and small funds be sent on their account so that they make a choice of what they want to do what?
To do that.
Of what they want to eat, so that you don't choose for me what posho I eat and what beans I have to eat and whatever it is. But of course that comes also with its own challenges, because they can be, a household can give you multiple numbers and X, Y, and Z. It would be delayed. Was the time there? The time was not there. Now, during crisis, of course, unscrupulous people will take advantage and supply you with the air, either with adulterated goods or with the air. And that is what happened. But we warned in the first instance that, one, why is it that you rely on the same names of suppliers? Since we are in crisis purchase, why don't you open up for all Ugandans who have the ability and capability to supply you? And you say the Prime Minister's office has a budget of 59 billion. All those that have the following, please come and supply us at this price.
I think you could pause there, because I think, yes, Honorable Musa Cheru, you need to respond to that, because now I have even come to understand that you are actually controlling even the supply, making it even more tighter, giving it to just one more individual, military general.
Maybe if I may comment that, just a second. Not that I'm trying to interfere with the Honorable Musa Cheru. I asked them when they presented this supplementary budget, and clearly I asked that, where do you find the cost of maize flour being at 2,500? At that time, the cost of maize flour was not 3,000 as had been proposed. It was at about 2,200. Then the cost of beans, which is now at about 4,000 plus, was at about 2,800. But you see, now when you don't call upon everyone to offer what they can supply to government, what happens is people hoard. And they say, since you chose Mr. Kamara let him give you the beans. Because at the end of the day, the issue should be, how is the local farmer in the village in Chegegwa, in Chenjojo, in Katakwi, who has grown his beans or her beans?
Even local businessmen.
Yes,
in different areas.
even local businessmen.
This is how you
how are they
separate-
benefiting? Because these people go and purchase these beans from local farmers at about 700 shillings per kilo. And then they sell to government at bizarre prices. So if we had called upon the task forces that we had set up, that listen, task forces at the district, identify for us these farmers in their groups as they are. And this should be a reminder to us to talk about the cooperatives that were there. So, but in this instance, as we were, you know, rushing to try to quell the issue of hunger, hunger doesn't wait, and that one we can understand. But we could have done better by calling upon all those people who had supplies. I know people were calling me and saying, listen, I have maize flour here, and I can sell it at 2,200 or 2,000 if it's in bulk. And this is quality number one. So at the end of the day, we appreciate the good cause of everyone who wants to donate. But can we have the quality that people can consume? Maybe the question the minister should be asking these suppliers should be, the food that you're trying to supply the people to consume, can you consume it at home?
I think President Museveni, in most cases, is a man with a good intention, with good intentions. But you, his lieutenants, have let him down several times. And you malign his name by doing what you do.
Kamara, let me start from what my brothers, where he stopped. Why give particular groups monopoly, kind of enjoying monopoly status in as far as supplies are concerned? It is true that there have been, most government agencies have had groups they call pre-qualified groups. When you ask these people in the procurement department, they will say, Mr. Minister, we would have loved to accept what you are suggesting, like Kamara can supply, but he's not pre-qualified with us, and PPDA will not accept. And therefore, that's where the loophole has been. You will find the technical people will line up their so-called pre-qualified people, but even in that lineup of, say, like 100 companies, they prefer, say, like about 4 to 5 for obvious reasons.
What are the obvious reasons?
The obvious reasons is that those people give them kickbacks. And sometimes they can manipulate the prices. This is what is happening.
So you are a minister,
just a minute,
of this government, and you know the rot.
Precisely.
You actually say, why didn't you just get it out?
Precisely.
Why do you come and organize with us?
Yes.
Instead of organizing your area?
No, let me tell you, Kamara, you don't know what happens in ministries. You don't know what happens in ministries.
What happens?
If, for example, ministers came to NTV here and came and said, on such and such a day, I disagreed with my PS, you would think the whole country is on fire. But that's not the point. Let's come back to what we are doing here now. The position is, yes, the lockdown was kind of sudden. It did not allow for preparations, for also good reasons. If you listen to HD President, he indicated to the country that if we had warned people like, prepare, we are going to cause a lockdown in the next 2 days, there would have been a stampede. Ugandans would be running to the countryside, and those who might be infected in the city here would have taken the virus to the countryside and would now be on fire. So there was need to do a surprise command. That was inevitable, but with all the pain. Now, then for us now, when this was identified as a critical need, we were told to swing in. But we swung in with a number of challenges. The first challenge, where do we get the money? And yet we must kickstart the process. So Parliament has to process a supplementary, which is presented by the sectors. Then it took a bit of time, a week and a half, for Parliament to do that. It is a normal procedure of Parliament to make sure that they scrutinize what the center, what the executive proposes. Then it was sent now to finance, and finance now to the agencies. In between, these technical people said, now how can we kickstart the process? For them, they quickly swung in action and call the other groups that they have always known, the big groups. And that's how the Aponyes come in and all these other big groups come in. Now, these big groups, why did they, the reason when we ask, why do you call this up? Say, first of all, we are just giving them our goodwill because we don't have cash yet. So we expect them, because of their strong foundation, they will be able to supply even on credit. But then the problem was, of course, the price. And the pricing is what now attracted the attention of the institutions of accountability of the government. And that's why some of them were arrested and now supposed to be produced in court of law. So that is what is happening now. Immediately that was done. Then we said, what is exactly the price that can be acceptable? For us, we thought it should have been about 4,000. But because again of the conditions that health has given us, the Minister of Health is saying there must be very few hands, as few as possible, touching this food in the process, lest it gets contaminated, not just by the toxins you are talking about or the stones or whatever, but even just the touching, if the handling, if the people who are handling it are people who might be, one or two might be unwell. So it must be subjected to these automated machines that can immediately, it is cleaned, it goes and it is measured and packaged and they seal the package. So that's how they summoned this group. But when we looked at it, we said, no, I think these groups don't monopolize this kind of services. Why don't we, for example, I know you are insinuating some group. Let me give you OWC, for example. OWC doesn't have their own stocks, but they have people they have dealt with in the different corners of the country. They gave them seeds, they have produced a lot of beans, but they are smallholder producers. You find somebody that's just about 30 bags, somebody has 10 bags, but they have been there because they were suffocated by these big groups. So OWC now said, why don't we call up those people to bring this thing to us, then we clean it and package it the way OPM wants. And I can tell you that is what has to a great extent helped us to make a breakthrough. So we have bent this PPDA regulation of saying one must be pre-qualified. This is an emergency situation. We asked
I'm told one of the problems, Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, of our grains in Uganda, they have what they call aflatoxins. And aflatoxins are not easily, detectable. And yet these are cancer-causing substances. How do we ensure that even the maize and beans that is looking good does not have those substances that can actually harm the population?
Now, what we have done now for this, what we have always been doing, before we give out food in our stores, we call UNBS. Now, as we talk, I have two stores, one in Namamve, and one World Food Program was kind to give me their stores in the industrial area Nakawa. Now, UNBS sits there. In fact, we are giving them to some of the scientists to stay there in the store. So everything that is brought there, whether donation or procured by government, so long as it is meant for eating, is subjected to analysis by UNBS. So if UNBS says this is unfit for example, I told the country that I am not a very good scientist. I'm not very good in chemistry. But I asked them, what is this? They say sometimes because of just the processing of maize flour, the process, maybe you have not dried it to unacceptable moisture content. Then you subject it to grinding, and then you put it to a container or a straw which might be leaking or something like that. All that risks contaminating the food. But then they say there are percentages. If you have this percentage, sometimes in the villages we might be having this kind of food and we consume them and we survive. But if you have this percentage, in fact one of the scientists told me, it will shock the body. The moment somebody eats it, he can actually even die. So for that reason, we analyze the percentages of what might appear to be a contamination, and if we find it is the normal acceptable level, then we can. But if it is anything that can harm a human being, we will not release. So that is what UNBS is doing.
Ahmad Nsereko, like they say, if the poor are not sleeping, they are hungry and angry. Even you, the ministers and our MPs, you will not sleep because the poor are awake. This is actually taking us on the precipice of anarchy. Because if you meet a hungry and angry man, there's nothing that you're going to do to stop him. Even if it means to break out of the lockdown, he will go. And how do we go about this?
You see, the only way out of this is I had made proposals, economic proposals. I remember we presented them on the floor of Parliament, Honorable Elijah Okupa, a few of them, but even others. And we said all countries are doing two things. As they are fighting on the health front, they are also making meaningful proposals economically to give people comfort that as you stay home, there is something in your pocket. Actually, if we had talked about creation of a few measures economically, then we wouldn't be in this conundrum now. For example, I clearly stated that very many people have loans, salary loans to mention but a few. If the government had acted, because the measure it's used, it's a copy and paste from measures that were used even to the extreme in countries like China, in countries like very many European countries, but they had interventions. As Italy told people stay home, do not go to work, they told them there is a loan freeze. If you have a mortgage, you will not be asked by your bank to go. But I'm trying to give you the, because even if we discuss all the food now, people want food.
That's true.
The mandate to supply that food lies with you. The cleaning up, we can talk about washing, whatever the issue should be. Are there viable suppliers in the country? The answer is yes. Are you willing to take up the food? Now you've said you've lifted the veil. Yeah. Good enough. Now the issue is you call upon all suppliers who have the eligibility to come. That has been done. To come, and we thank you very much, to come to your good office and see how much they can contribute in form of supply.
So you have your food in stores in Namamve and Nakawa. Just before we came here, I met a man when I was coming to work. He's a driver who's of course under lockdown now, like many of us. And he's asking me, Kamara, where is the food? And I could see the anger in his face. And I could actually see this man is not only angry, but he's also hungry. And he said he doesn't see it. He's here in Kampala, he's vulnerable. He's a driver. His taxi is parked somewhere. So really, people like these, Honorable Musa Chweru, what do you tell them?
No, I want again to confirm what you're saying, that the lockdown has impacted on our population very, very drastically. And not just in Kampala, capital city, but also in other parts, in all the corners of the country. The other reality is what we did was to rank the level of predicament that the community is in. We realized, for example, and I want to be very honest, particularly to my listeners in Amuria there and those other parts of the country. I know for sure that that driver who might be staying in my village or in Soroti is also as affected as the one in any other corner of the country. But that driver in Soroti or in the sub-county of Wera can go to his backyard and access some dodo, some vegetable, and at least be able to not do well, but survive. But I am just a minute.
Uganda is getting highly urbanized.
Let me
there are
say,
so many
I do understand.
With people who do not have the backyard garden.
No, Kamara,
people who
that driver in Wera is different from the driver staying in Katanga, from the driver Honorable Seriko is describing in Kamocha. And I can tell the country very, very honestly, you know, sometimes we put on the suits and we drive along the town and we think most of our cities like Kampala here.
I don't think they are different from a driver in Badege Division in Gulu, in Kakoba in Imbarara, or East Division
Kakoba in Imbarara.
Because they too are in an urban center. Yes. They are renting, they have no farm, they have no backyard garden.
But they
are in a municipality. In fact, some of these towns have been even put to a level of a city.
Cities. We have
suffer the same fate.
We have looked at some of those unique areas. We are saying when we are done with the Kampala, when we are done with Wakiso and a bit of Mukono, then we go back on the drawing board and look at some unique cities where we see people living in those very big informal settlements which are similar to what I am describing. But the point I'm making here, Ndugu Nsereko, it is not that the government is blind to the pain of the people in the countryside. The president made it very clear. The president said, yes, there is general poverty and this thing has just exacerbated it. The reality is, in this city, for example, and probably if you look at Jinja, those areas of Biko, and you look at those areas you are describing, there are people who have zero options. They have zero options. And I can tell you also, apart from just that, there are categories that we have not highlighted. And Honorable Natural, I assigned her on behalf of the Prime Minister to support me in handling orphanages and children's homes. You know, sometimes in Mohammed is
trying to connect to Honorable Nakiwa to check that, because what you're saying. But let's continue.
I just want to make my point. Honorable Sereko, there are institutions like that are sometimes not captured in our radar. Why? Because they seem to appear to be self-sustaining. The donors are running them, and our children are there, and we don't kind of feel the weight on our shoulders. But until a situation like this develops, then it lifts and we realize, oh, we have 3,000, about 4,000 orphans in Kampala and Mukono alone. And you know what type of orphans? Because I've visited most of these places. They are what they call double orphans. You find, and he doesn't know his mother, he doesn't know his father. This is a child, probably resembles Kamara, but this child was dumped in a pit latrine, and then the police recovered that child, or dumped in a dustbin, police recovered and took to this orphanage. A beautiful, handsome boy, a beautiful girl, but doesn't know a mother, doesn't know her father. The police who put them in the orphanage also left. So these children are in their thousands. Unfortunately, the people who have been supporting this organization, some of them are also affected by the lockdowns in different parts of the world. So they were facing starvation. And that's why when I went even to Parliament, I explained to my colleague members of Parliament, yes, you had told us to stay this exercise, but I am a minister responsible for emergencies. The mandate you gave me, you Parliament and the Executive and the President, was to read the signals of distress in the country. And if I see in reading the signals that there is a threat to life, there is something that is life-threatening, I don't need to wait for you colleagues to intervene. I can intervene, then come and explain to you. And that's what we precisely have done.
Okay, before we take a break, let me ask you, Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, for his analysis on why you think there's this slow pace of distribution of food within Kampala. Because the stores are here, the military that is distributing the food is here, they are facilitated, Parliament has appropriated funds to them, but still they are moving at a slow pace. What do you think explains this?
One is a lack of availability of enough food. I don't agree that they have enough food.
Particularly beans.
They talked about milk and whatever it is. It is not available in stock. The maize flour in bulk to supply the people. But even that one that is there, they lack the manpower. They lack the manpower. Then two,
the manpower to distribute?
Yes.
Yet it is that is a job taken by the UPDF?
Yes. I was there trying to distribute food. It's not a joke. Moving door to door, putting this food there, they should have involved the local committees to move with them and help them. Even to an extent of hiring people. You can pay porters. When you go into a parish, you mobilize 10, 20 youth, and this is at the expense of the supplier, because this man has been provided. I go into Mengo Parish, I get about 30 youth, and tell them you're going to do this work with the police force or with the LDU, even if they are 40, it will be done in 20 minutes. They'll move that food at the speed you do not even realize, and you'll give each of them 20,000. Simple. No, I'm trying to tell you something that is practical.
Yes, but it
if you get 40 of them, yes, I'm trying to tell you, but I mean, having the food for 14 days without distribution and people dying of hunger, what is better? Because one, I've told you one of the causes is the lack of adequate food. But secondly, look at the cost of logistical movement of food. Here,
it's about 4 billion.
4 billion shillings for the UPDF to distribute food. Today, what I've heard is that now they are telling KCCA, you must bring the trucks. But they are not giving them the money for the fuel. Now, you have food for 59 billion, but you have to spend 4 billion to move it. Yes. This is not acceptable. How? Me, I can tell you, give me one truck, I'll give you the cost of movement of food to the whole division of Kampala. So if we have 5 divisions, I don't even need more than 50 million to move the entire food of Kampala Central.
It's more challenging than that.
Okay.
It is
Gentlemen,
more challenging,
yes,
but
yes.
I'm trying to tell you out of experience.
Gentlemen, we're going
Because
to
maybe
hold
the
on to
question
your point,
on
Honorable Nseko.
benchmarking would be,
Hold on to your point.
Honorable, how did you do it?
Let's take a break and we'll be
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara and my guests tonight are Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, Member of Parliament representing Kampala Central, and Honorable Musa Chweru, Minister of State for Disaster Preparedness. And we're talking about the distribution of relief food to vulnerable communities in Uganda. Earlier, the Honorable Musa Chweru, you said you're working alongside the State Minister for Youth and Children Affairs, the Honorable Nakiwala Kiyingi. I think I want to get Honorable Nakiwala Kiyingi and find out whether what you're telling me is true, but also want to find out what they are doing to the vulnerable communities, especially the juveniles who are in those detention centers. Let me have Honorable Nakiwala. Tell us, what are you doing for the vulnerable children, especially those in the orphanages and the juvenile detention centers? What is the situation there, Honorable Nakiwala?
This activity is certainly head. Minister, who is the overall head. Prime Minister.
I'll have to cut that now. It's unfortunate, but my producer is going to try as much as possible so that we get to know what the situation is like in those communities, especially young children and those in the orphanage centers. Yes, we'll get back to.
What the minister would have, was likely to tell you, she has been very helpful, especially in the orphanages.
Okay.
We realized that the orphanages must be attended to. But just like Nsereko Honorable has told us, unscrupulous people were quick to get organized. You would go to a place and somebody is saying, I also have an orphanage here, and you find a person has assembled 10, 11 miserable looking children, and they want you to support them. So that's why we said, you, the minister responsible for children's affairs, this is your food, and these are the facilities you have recognized as government. Can you go and make sure that this is delivered? And we are very happy that she has done this. I also want to say, for example, you might, Honorable Nsereko, HD President, on seeing that on my own as Musa Chweru working with the Honorable Rugunda, would have gotten overwhelmed. So he decided to assign ministers to each division. So for example, there is a minister responsible for marking the division, that's Honorable Ogwang. Here in the center, we have the whole Minister of Local Government himself in charge. We have somebody, Bariomusi Honorable, is responsible for Nakawa. We have my sister Benny is responsible for Rubaga. And we have people responsible for Kawempe, or colleague ministers. So those people provide support, supervision, and they can make decisions instantly on the ground and then relay to us what needs to be done. Because for me, my office, I oscillate between the office and the stores.
But let me bring in the Honorable Nsereko, because the food you are distributing was made to help the people in the first lockdown.
Yes.
And this lockdown, the first lockdown really ended about 2 days ago.
Yes.
And you had not even gone to a quarter of Kampala.
Yes, because of,
really?
because of what I've explained.
Yes. And now you have added 21 days.
Yes.
I wonder whether, how you're not even
Fortunately,
moved.
fortunately, Kamara,
No,
fortunately, Kamara, the 21 days have come when we have not done about 3/4 of the population.
no, not even 3/4. Not even
No,
half.
3/4. So what we are now talking about, and we are communicating this message very clearly to the beneficiaries. You are going to receive this food. Please be frugal with it, because 21 days is not a short time. Be very frugal with it, because in some areas, our people were thinking they were selling the food.
Honorable Nsereko, I'm sure on the floor of Parliament, these are things you should be asking, because if they were meant to do this job in 14 days, and in 14 days they have done a quarter, and the president has added us another 21 days, are we not really staring at a disaster?
But unless you've not been following, he can bear witness that I asked this question. He was in Parliament, and my question was simple. There is no doubt people are in dire need of food. Now, everyone who was even at the age borderline has now become vulnerable, because now from 14 to 21, it's now 35 days. And everyone seems to be, in confusion as to whether even those that had stocked in the beginning are running out of their rations and stocks. Those that had sent, and it has a lot to go beyond food. There are some people who had stocked medicine. They cannot access this medicine. That's why my view was that I was talking about this. When this supplementary came, we had different proposals. We had more, and our view was that, one, give health and food aid the entire budget, and give little to logistics. Now, what you have as what we have now is 88 billion going to the UPDF and police force.
88?
Nearly 88. This is what we have. Okay? More than the food. Now you have more for UPDF and the police force. Let me be very clear. Then for
the
food,
88 for what? For health distribution was 4 billion.
I'm telling you why are you skipping the things? I'm talking of 88 for surveillance, talking about this deployment, to mention but a few. I would have been comfortable, just a second, if food aid had about 80, and then give UPDF, even if it's 6, for logistical movement and surveillance. Now you have 59 and you have 4 for logistics. And I'm not doubting their capability. And I'm not doubting your capability to deliver. No, not as an individual, not as someone who is in charge of the ministry.
Let me get
back. But my question
let me
is,
get back, because
you don't need.
I've tried to reconnect again with the
You
Honorable
don't need
Nakiwala.
4 billion to move food.
Okay, I'm trying to
billion.
reconnect again with the Honorable Nakiwala Kiingi, Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs. And what is the situation like in the orphanage centers, but also those young people in the juvenile detention centers?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. As I was saying, the team is headed by the Prime Minister, who is the national chair. But below that, we have the committee, which is headed by Honorable Mose Chero, who is right there with you. And then further down, we are working with the Office of the Prime Minister, the Disaster Preparedness, where we have Madame Bwemvu and then Jime Ogwang. So I have been supervising the relief aid for the country. And today, we have over a half of the country covered in terms of relief food to the children. We have 143 homes, but as I talk now, we have covered close to 70. That puts us in a situation where we have covered Kampala. In terms of food aid, we have issued Kampala with maize flour, 9,000 kilos. We have issued beans to Kampala, 4,500 kilograms. We have issued sugar, 1,300 kgs, milk, as in tins, 200 tins, and juice, 54 packs. Then we proceeded to Mukono. Mukono, we distributed 6,000 kgs, then beans, 3,000 kgs, then 228 kilograms of sugar, 98 tins of milk, and 89 boxes of juice. Then we proceeded to Wakiso. Wakiso has close to 25 homes, where we distributed 14,606 kilograms of maize flour, then beans 660 kgs, sugar, milk, and juice. But in doing all this, we have accessed 4,000 745 children in the homes that we have visited, well knowing that we have over 6,000 homes spread through the country. So the onus now is for us beginning tomorrow to spread to the rest of the homes that cover the northern region, eastern, western, and southern. But it should be remembered as well that we are only handling the homes that the Ministry of Gender licensed. In other words, the ones that I gave a license. We came across scenarios where people simply gather children in a home and then they said this one was also a remand home or a juvenile center or a reception center. But we have been very careful to stick to the mandate given to us by government to ensure that we follow the list of licensed homes. But at the same time, I really need to thank the team that we are working with, because the children, yes, the children get hungry faster than probably the adults. And we are talking about some of these children who are highly disabled, and some of the children are not in a good state of mind. So they simply do not understand whether there is COVID or not. So I thank the children governors, the maids, the wardens, and we have recently changed all the children. Those were few in a home. We galvanized them, summed them up, and then took them to centers that are far more busier than that. So Kampala particularly had 24 homes. So we started with those and distributed what was necessary to those homes. So to date, we are spreading out to the rest of the homes that particularly are hard hit. Remember, all these homes get their aid from tourists. They also get their money from donations. So at this point in time, when we do not have tourists in the country, when people cannot get out of their homes to go and donate probably to Sanyo Baby's Home, to Retrack, to Friendly Child, to Missionaries of the Poor, so we have to come up as government. So I thank the Prime Minister's office, and I have been opening, as you could see the videos and the photos, I have been opening some of this food aid as I hand it over. So I'm pretty much sure that the children are getting a good service from the government.
All right, Honorable Nachiwala Kiingi, let us stop there. I would have loved to ask you more questions on that, but I think I'm going to stop it at that. My only problem is that she said that they were only getting to those that are licensed and are known by the ministry. We are not working in normal times. If you find a community that maybe of 20 children together, even if they are not registered or not known, you've got to go, because now you have to save a life. So I wonder why they were deciding to jump those, because they are not known. We are not working under normal times. These are not normal times.
I think she has a point. To avoid these groups first that will basically round up children and claim that I have this. But what is important, what is very important is that we will look at that. We'll look at that and see what can be done. We'll look at that and see what can be done. Again, it is like also here in the city, and I want to use this opportunity. I want to use this opportunity to inform the country that we have a challenge of refugees, urban refugees. We have a challenge of urban refugees. Our policy, Kamara and Ndugu Nsereko, our policy is to have all the refugees in settlements. So those who come to the city, the assumption is that they can fend for themselves. And so we have not been supporting them ideally the way we support those in the settlements. And there are 94,000 here in Kampala and the surrounding areas. 94,000. Now they are in a predicament. They must be supported. And we cannot continue saying we don't look after you because you are in the town. Because now their means of survival has also been curtailed. So for that group, my teams were not supporting them on the ground, and my attention was drawn to it. So I've also communicated to UNHCR. Fortunately, World Food Program has indicated to me this evening that they have been able to mobilize resources, particularly to target the urban refugees. So they will be handled.
Let me introduce something else, and this is the plight of the Ugandans in the diaspora. And I have seen the Honorable Muhammad Nsereko on different platforms talking about how African leaders should come up and help especially Ugandans in China. But not only Ugandans in China, we have also Ugandans in distress in United Arab Emirates, in Dubai, and they are also under lockdown. I have seen videos coming from Ugandans. You know, when you look at it, you really feel touched if you are a parent. Especially, there was a girl who was talking about having children in the background, and they didn't have anything to drink, nothing to eat, and these are toddlers, and they are just calling out to their motherland in an SOS message to save them. What are you doing for those Ugandans who have sent messages of distress to their motherland?
First of all, I listened to Honorable Sereko's statement, and I must say I support it. Me, I can say this here. The reality is that I think some of our friends out there really don't wish us well. They wear friendly faces here when they are in Africa or in Uganda, just because they want to
Can you hold on that? Because I right now have
Yes.
somebody who is online from Dubai. And I think that is Mr. Tusime. Can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Tusime in Dubai. Can you hear me? I just wanted to get an example of somebody.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we have not. So
Okay.
what government did, for
Let's try
example,
to
for example, these children who are in China in Wuhan, is that Wuhan?
Yes.
Where the outbreak first was recognized, the government was able to mobilize some support through the Ministry of Education, and they were supported and they survived. But we have now realized that there are more, there are two categories of people in China. There are those who went there for studies and for other things, and they have valid visas. But there are also those who went there, like the Swahilis in Kenya call them makanyago, illegal immigrants. But they are still our citizens. But what now the government decided was to talk to the Minister of Foreign Affairs first to see how they can engage the ambassador here, so that they can be able to be looked after as human beings, as we wait for the lifting of the lockdown, both here and also the opening of the international.
Okay,
Yes.
I don't like to
Yes.
stop you, but because I just want to get the picture from those who are in such a situation,
Yes.
I'm trying to reconnect again with Mr. Tusime in Dubai. Good evening, sir. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Please, could you tell us what the situation is and where you are? I don't like to stop you, but because I just want to take a picture from those who are in such a situation. I'm trying to connect again. Okay.
Hello, good evening, Uganda. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Please go right ahead and tell us what you are able to see. We are hearing you loud and clear.
And where you're getting me. Can you hear me, please?
We hear you loud and clear.
I'm hearing you loud and clear. Please go right ahead and tell us what the situation is like where you are.
Okay, that is great. Good evening, Uganda. Once again, Kamara and Honorable Cherry. Yeah, I'm pretty very much to, I want to put this question to Honorable straight. Okay. I'm much interested to put this question to the Honorable Minister Echeru, loud and clear. I've been following his submission, of which I've been able to identify is this. One, he's having a challenge between what they are supposed to do and or he knows what he's supposed to do, but maybe perhaps he could be handicapped for some reason, I don't know, which I cannot describe. One is this. The thing is very simple. What I've come to identify, they are lacking the operational systems to execute their duties, because he kept referring the entire era of the bad food to the Bureau of Standards came in, the NARO came in. The question is this. the responsibility of the National Bureau of Standards is to confirm the plight of.
Now, we would have loved to hear more about the condition of the people in the diaspora where you are.
In Dubai.
Okay. Looks like we have lost connection there. I think he was trying to build up a point on with the local situation. Before the connection went, I would have loved more to hear from him about the conditions in Dubai, because we have so many Ugandans who are there. But I think he was also trying, is not convinced by the way how you're doing your things.
No, it can't be. It can't
anyway.
know more than we do here. It's
Okay.
in Dubai.
Okay. But Honorable Mohammed Nsereko, you know, you put out that video, and it's gone viral. The minister has seen it. I've watched it, and other people. What has changed since?
Not so much. Of course, government responded. I first presented the matter in Parliament that there are Ugandans under distress in China and other countries, and they have been calling us. For example, now, as we are speaking now, there are 243 students in Algeria, Egypt, and other countries. Now, they are legitimately there. Their visas are running, but the government has put up a lockdown, and it cannot give food to non-citizens. It's happening to our people in the diaspora and in other countries where some either fall under the category of undocumented and others are even students. So there are various students outside Uganda and various citizens of Uganda that are outside this country that are under conditions of lockdown, but those governments cannot take responsibility over them. Why? They are not declared as either refugees under refugee status, so that maybe probably the World Food Program or the United Nations has issues with mandates and agreements with different governments can make an intervention to help them earn a living. Now, this has happened to Ugandans even in some Arab countries. Some have their contracts that have run out. They want to return home. Home we locked. The other countries have also locked them down. Now, they are not being paid because they are not at work. Many companies have laid them off as a result of the fact that they are locked down. So those that were working in oil refineries, most oil refineries are locked down. Those that were on construction sites, let's say in UAE and in other countries like Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, they are under lockdown. Don't look at only the category of maids. There are some professional and non-professional workers that have been, that are providing services of labor in those countries. They are under lockdown. These people have been sent to dormitories, and there is no food. The companies,
So what is the government's
the companies
response
cannot take
to people like those the Honorable Mohammed Nsereko is talking about? What are you doing for them?
I am telling the country, Cabinet took it up. This one I am not a spokesman for Cabinet, but I can say this. Cabinet took it up under the leadership, the chairmanship of HD President and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Kutesa particularly, was directed to handle this with the different governments. I am sure, of course, the magnitude now that Honorable Nsereko is describing is bigger than probably what has been handled. Because, for example, China has committed, the ambassador here has committed that he will communicate to his country to see how best they can take care of the welfare of our people. What didn't seem to have come out very clearly was the xenophobic attacks. Yes. The xenophobic attacks that seem to be now emerging, particularly in China. And it's very, very strange because I thought China is a country that is now really sharing with us sisterly, brotherly relationship. I would not imagine Chinese mistreating our people the way, if the pictures that we are seeing must really be something that can. So, but I am sure the Minister of Foreign Affairs must continue to engage and if all the ministers of that portfolio in the continent engaged the ambassadors and indicated to the ambassadors that we are not happy with particularly the xenophobic attacks and apart from the welfare, that would now, the Algerian question, for example, that is again, because now Algeria, most of the students that I know are in Algeria went on scholarships offered by the government there. Now, it is also just a question of engaging the government again. These are your hosts. These are your guests. It's like us. You saw me the other day make a pronouncement that while we have closed the border not to allow any new refugees. The 1.5 million refugees who are here, we are prepared to take care of their well-being here because we are the hosts and they are our guests. There is no way you can say now we are only going to support our people, and then so it becomes very complicated. So I think it is rigorous engagement by our respective ministers of foreign affairs to engage those governments, and they will, because it is not a law. It's just going to be about 3 weeks, and this storm will pass. I am very convinced.
Okay, and that's why I wanted to intervene and tell you. This is the cry of the people and those that I've interacted with. Of course, most want to return home, and if there is a charter to get them home, they are ready to be quarantined at home. Because you see, conditions are so different. You could imagine, you know, Eddie Kenzo was saying, listen, guys, I'm locked up here, and every single day I have to pay $300.
I spoke to him yesterday on phone.
I mean, it's not, and the more you stretch, the more it goes to 9,000 and this, and you know, he cannot move out, he's not a citizen there. It is different, and we can talk about, you know, that until cows come back home. But even now here back at home, can we hasten, can we try to fasten the speed of giving out food? And bearing in mind, yes, Comrade Kamara, we the Muslims are beginning fasting very soon. We've never asked for food rations. No, people have never. I'm trying to tell you this because we work. That is the law and the command of the Holy Quran. Go and work, fast, and come back and feed your families. Now, people are under lockdown. In a week, even during lockdown, they have started fasting. We must think faster than what is available, with the available means that we have, to call upon every single person that can give supplies so that these people can get food.
No, what I want, Mohammed,
because now Wakiso,
okay,
people in Kira have nothing, Kasokoso, and those areas, there are very many slums.
No, what
the problem is huge and massive. But maybe the minister will wind up.
Okay, we're not. We're going to take a break so that when we come back, I'll open the lines. You're going to see the numbers on the screen. Pick up the phone and tell us what you think, and also be asking the minister, because I understand there has been an influx of hundreds of Pokot cattle keepers into the Karamoja area. I wonder who is testing them and what is the situation there for those who are herding their cows into Karamoja region. We'll be right back. Back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara, and my guests tonight are Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, Member of Parliament representing Kampala Central, and Honorable Musa Chweru, Minister of State for Disaster Preparedness. And we have also now, we want to go to the areas of Karamoja, because I understand we have about hundreds of Pokot cattle herdsmen who have crossed into Karamoja in the areas of Napak and Nakapiripirit. I wonder who is testing them and what the situation is like. But we have the Honorable Esther Nyakoni online. Good evening, Honorable.
Good evening. How are you?
Please, thank you. We're happy to hear your voice. I'm fine, thank you. Please, could you just let me know, what is the situation with the cattle keepers coming in from across the border?
Actually, this morning at around 8 a.m., the detention is district that is in Namalu sub-county. And so a number of around 80 people entered Namaru sub-county following, I think, some cattle issues. These guys came with over 30 Kenyan number plates, motorbikes with elements, and they were carrying 3 of them on a motorbike. So fortunately, the security and the district task force intercepted these guys, and 66 of them of these Pokot warriors were got, and they were taken to institutional quarantine in Namalo Mixed Primary School. 5 of them have normal temperature according to the DHO, and they've been used the digital thermometer to take their temperatures. So they have been isolated in Tokora Health Center for investigation, and their specimens will be taken tomorrow, and I think to be brought now to Uganda via this station in Tebe.
Some of these cattle keepers among the Karamojong and the Pokot, in some cases they are armed. Are we talking about armed cattle raiders coming in from Kenya?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, like the cattle raid. There was a cattle raid, I think, between the Pokot and the communities of Nakuru raid. What we have to have at the back of our mind is like the Pokot has no citizenship at that side of Amber. They have forest border. So we're very scared as a district and the people of Karamoja, because when these people come through those forest borders and also come and graze around and all issues, like for example, the 5 who have been isolated, the specimen will be taken off tomorrow at Chokora Health Center 4. And this is a very serious issue. I talked to the PAO, the RLC, the DHO, and the DSO of Nakapipi district to confirm to me this incident after the community was very concerned about the outcry of this accident of this in Namalu County.
Okay, and do we have Ugandan herdsmen who could have crossed the border into Kenya to go and graze, you know, or maybe mix with the G and the Topoth and the Dodoth?
Yeah, we have normally during this season we have the Kenyan Pokots who come to my district to do the grazing, and so this is where there is a very serious. We may need to swing in. We need security. We need, as a national task force, to take up action and see how this can be handled as soon as possible, to deploy enough and look between the Kenyan Pokots due to their dual citizenship to stop coming to Ugandan sites, because we know very well that the cases of COVID-19 in Kenya at large in the communities, they're not like quarantined like the ones of Uganda.
And lastly, to you, Honorable Nyakuni, just give us a picture of how you're trying to police Uganda's porous borders on that axis.
Yeah, as we talk right now, there's been some deployment, but you know, it is just like these people have families in both borders, so it is very difficult, I'm sure, even for the security to stop this. But I think it has to be a collective effort between the East African community that these people should be frozen from coming from either side. Whether you have the family the other side or this side, we should not be in position to do that for now, because it's a very serious issue. Imagine tomorrow if these people here are got positive, if their statements are brought back from Uganda virus, it's going to cause a very big commotion. Like Namalu sub-county that I'm talking about is one of the largest populated sub-counties in the whole of Karamoja, so it's going to be a very, very tense situation as far as Karamoja is concerned.
We thank you very much, Honorable Esther Nyakuni. Thank you very much for that information. We pray that the samples taken there will turn up negative, because that would be disastrous for Namalu and for Uganda in general. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's not only in Karamoja, but also on the eastern side, on the western side of our border, we have chaos in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There has always been a war raging there, and we are lucky to have people because the Lendu have been fighting with the Hammer and the Mai Mai.
No, the country needs to know that first of all, last week when I communicated specifically on our interventions on refugee areas, refugee hosting areas and our borders, I want to thank my officers. We have abolished all what we used to call reception centers for the next 30 days. They will not be operating. We have replaced them with the security in all those areas. It is a painful decision, because this makes it now impossible for people, for example, to come into the country even if they are being persecuted in their country. So we have
you're saying if people are running away from war in Congo, they can't enter
stay
Uganda?
There. Now I'm developing my case. So what has happened is we have communicated UNHCR Uganda, communicating with UNHCR South Sudan, communicating with UNHCR DRC and Burundi, so that our people who wanted to run into Uganda because of the chaos obtaining in their countries are kept in IDPs like we had in the north for some time. But there is a limit to it. For example, what is happening now in Zombo in the last 2 days, this is not something that is new. It looks like the tribal clashes between the Lendu and the Bahema have flared up again. You know, remember about 2 months ago, there were thousands of children who had run into Zombo. Now, yesterday, they communicated to me, Mr. Minister, you told us that refugees will not come, but these people have poured into Zombo, and they are not, they come through, because like my sister is describing, you find that the Lendus are in Zombo, but a bigger population is on the other side of DR Congo. So if they are in danger, the other group, they will just run as if they are running for sanctuary among their relatives on this side. So that is dangerous, given what is obtaining in DR Congo. Two things can happen. We can get an outbreak of Ebola now. That will compound the challenge of COVID-19. So we have shared it with the security, and General Tumwine, fortunately, is the chairman of the subcommittee of security, and I think already some action has been taken. So that brings first I wanted to inform my brother Sereko. He's worried about the amount of resources that are allocated to security. I want to tell you, Ndugu Kamara, the deployment that the security has had in order to enforce this border blocking of the borders is so huge. It is not something that they have been doing under normal circumstances. They have just been having units in some areas where they just... But now the deployment, for example, go to Busia. You find you have to deploy from Busia up to Malaba. And make sure that these people who have been using that porous border as a smuggling route are kind of curtailed. But even with that heavy deployment, it has not checked it 100%. And yet the threats are real. The truth is our neighbors have had the kind of percentages that are worrying. Our neighbors have percentages of COVID-19 that are worrying. And if we allow, we could be close Entebbe, but only allow the borders, and if we don't police the borders properly, then we will be like closing one side of the house and keeping so many windows and doors open, and the bad guys will come from the other windows. So that is what is happening. So there is a lot of strain in what is happening, but we're happy with what the security is doing so far. This one of Nakapiripiriti, what Madam Anyakuni is describing. I am also happy as a neighbor of Karamoja to report to the country that cattle raids stopped with the disarmament. But cattle thefts continue to be there. So I was checking with the leadership there. What is going on? The information that they are giving me is it looks like our people from Karamoja went and stole cows from Pokot on Kenya side. Now the other people, they don't care about, they don't know this COVID thing, they don't even know the border. They just jumped on their borders and said there is an agreement which allows us to pursue our cows that have been stolen. So COVID or no COVID, we are going to Nakapiripirit. So they came in a big number to pursue their cows. Fortunately, they did not come violently. That's why they came in motorcycles. They came because they thought they would report to the authorities. But they forgot that there is a different situation right now obtaining in the whole world. But fortunately, the vigilance of the leadership, they were apprehended, and the checking now kind of indicates that they could be in problems, and we really pray that they are not in problem. But that is what's happening. There are cattle thefts in that part of the country still, and those cattle thefts must be checked by particularly again the security and the leadership, the local leadership. And so that is the situation in that part of the country.
Okay. You know, Mohamed Nsereko, before I can even have some callers, maybe 2 or 3 to contribute in this, what scares you most in this, if there is anything in this COVID-19 pandemic?
One is that as it goes on longer, then the threat that we have of people catching the disease and dying will be the threat. The biggest threat would be survival. Survival, it's so clear. And I'm talking about the people in urban areas.
Yes.
And 2, there will be a threat to our economy. I've told you clearly that if people cannot move on for 33 days, 34 days, then there is a problem. If it goes on longer and it stretches to another 2 months, I can tell you nearly the entire country will be on its knees.
I know, the issue of the economy is a big one.
And for me, that's why my proposal, I know you want us to discuss this. I'm not much interested. Because if I can fend for myself, I know where to buy. That's why my first proposal was address the issue of loans. When you address the issue of loans, you're talking about 96% of the urbanized people. Either if they are teachers, they have salary loans. If you have a loan freeze, even if you keep me home for another 30 days, I know that if I was committing 60% of my salary in form of, servicing my loan, if I had to pay part of my business, profits to service loans, to maintain my rent and this, because there are some people who nearly pay 4 million, 5 million per month. These are the people I'm talking about. Now that have also become vulnerable as a result of staying home. The more we put money in the pockets of our people, the better to create not only a stimulus.
How would you want it done?
We proposed this in the beginning. For one, loans. When you do loan reschedulement or a loan freeze, all countries that adopted a lockdown, whatever, whether it's Italy or name it, you're talking about people of about 2 million people. A taxi driver who was driving a taxi was servicing a loan. They take back money about 500,000 per week or 300,000. If you tell this person that, listen, there is a loan freeze no matter what, stay home, but retain this 1 million in your pocket, he's not under pressure. So this really finds someone who has something in their pocket. If a salaried worker here at NTV was remitting, let's say, 1 million shillings, and you tell him, listen, for this month, this 1 million shilling is enough for you, no one will be yearning for your food the way it is.
Why can't we do this?
I'm trying to continue. If a businessman that was supposed to return 4.5 million shillings had a loan freeze or to pay a mortgage, had a mortgage freeze, then that money automatically returns into your pocket. You might not give them money directly, but with the loan freeze, then that money automatically goes back to their pocket. For those that have social security, if government had proposed a law, because it touches the consolidated fund, to say everyone that has savings, let's say in the pension scheme or social security for national social security fund, can access, even if it's 10%, you're capturing 1.5 million people. First, the employers are laying off people. You had a letter from Verma, you all saw it, where they were telling someone we can no longer.
There are many organizations.
Many organizations are laying off people. Therefore, all organizations that are under distress, servicing loans, even companies, the first thing they do is to cut back on their employees. And at the end of the day, send you back home. What does the employee have as a fallback position? Where is my social security? If I can get off, even if it's 10% of my social security, if my savings are 40 million, I have 4 million to start with.
Honorable Mohammed.
So just a second. If I have 4 million to start with, at the end of the day, I have that comfort. But the signals people are sending is that, listen, you will pay rent, even if you've not been working, but right now no one can evict you. Definitely, no one is going to evict people because the shops are closed. But if I'm home and I know that, listen, government has given a loan waiver to my landlord. The landlord, mainly on commercial buildings, and this is what I'm trying to tell you, he will definitely have the art to say, listen, I was given a loan waiver. I was supposed to take back, let's say, 1 billion. Now I can also give a rent waiver to my people in reciprocation.
Okay, let's have.
So if people, just a second, if people are comfortable at home, knowing that, the utilities have been taken care of by government, I'm not paying for power, I'm not paying for water, I'm comfortable, I can run my tap, I can wash my hands. Like in Ghana, the president said, water bills, these are our responsibility.
Mohammed.
So as I'm waiting for food, I also have a stimulus to pick from. The hemorrhage, the money that was supposed to get out of my pocket is now back in my pocket. I can supplement government, and I say, listen, look for those ones in their homes and here and there. There are other 3 million people within the urban settings and the peri-urban. Now I'm talking of teachers. You're talking of a teacher who was posted in Nakapiripirit. He has no garden, he's not at work, he's a private school teacher, and he's soon being laid off. He has a loan. But if you tell him the loans have been frozen, then he knows that if part of my loan was... 700,000.
You made a point.
Then
You made a
that
point.
money is
Mohammed,
retained.
Honorable,
Yes.
we are members of parliament. We shall cross our bridge when we come to it. The point and the
But
most
we are the
critical,
bridge
the most critical thing now is survival. Everything else is secondary. Everything is secondary. The primary challenge that we have, in fact, one leader in Spain was talking, somebody was talking about the economy. The man says people in cemeteries don't discuss economy. Let us first survive. What we are doing,
Yeah,
this is a very unique.
This is not just a public health issue, it is also an economic
Precisely.
issue. So when you are talking about saving lives, you also have to think about saving livelihoods.
Let us survive. The parliament is not about to be disbanded. Immediately we get over this. First of all, what government has done, government has said, you service providers, do not victimize your clients now. That's what government has said. Government may not have come to say, we will take over the burden, but say, don't victimize them now. So the moment our people have survived, they have the electricity, they have their water, they have in their homes, not disconnected. Then we now, when it is the storm is over, we have now survived as a country. We say thank you, President Museveni. The consequences of the lockdown were painful, but it was worth it. Now we are here as members of parliament. Our people are suffering A, B, C, and D. And we as members of parliament, we have the following proposals. We are going to table it the House. And we table it and say, if it is NSSF, we hereby suggest that this must happen, this must happen. This is the government which
But NSSF, that money is supposed to help you.
When people are alive.
Honorable, we all agree with you that we want people to survive.
That's primary.
Just a second. The routes we are taking are different.
Yes.
For me, I'm telling you, only need a two-line amendment, just like this supplementary budget, the supplementary appropriation bill. And you come with an amendment. If you government, because we presented a motion to you, if government wishes the 1.8 million savers with NSSF way, it proposes an arrangement to say $1 trillion or from the 4 trillion that they have, or what is fixed is here. And we can say we can provide you with upfront 20%.
And that money can actually go to stimulate the economy.
Immediately, I have money in my pocket. I don't mind whether you've given me beans or whatever, because then I'll buy from the same market where you want to buy for me.
The problem
This is what I'm saying.
I see, Honorable Musa Cherry, is because that money is supposed to help me in a time when I'm most vulnerable, when I have no work.
Yes.
This is the moment now.
No, it is, that was not how the framers.
But now this is the time. They are not earning. They are home.
I think,
and yet they have their saving there. If you give them a percentage, like Honorable Muhammad Nsereko is proposing,
and that's
probably,
my proposal.
I see it in a bigger picture, because it can go along in stimulating even the economy. Because money, there will be cash flow within the economy.
Fortunately, I am sure many of my policymakers are watching this program. And I am going to suggest that I will also be your ambassador, the ambassador of the viewers out there, and I take it first and say, there is this proposal which keeps coming. First of all, it came from Muhammad, Honorable, and a few colleagues. Now, it looks like Kamara also seems to be buying into it, and many other people.
The entire population.
No, not the entire population.
So
they are buying into it. Why don't we really digest it and see whether it makes sense? We are going to propose it, particularly, I know the Right Honorable Prime Minister is watching the program, and many other leaders. So what does it mean? So that we engage some of the brains that can tell us, because again also, I know the NSSF management is so protective. They don't even want to engage in a discussion that involves unlocking some of their resources.
No, and by the way, we would like to be very, very, appreciative to them, that they have also given a holiday to employers for 90 days, not to remit the funds. That's also good.
Excellent.
That they will reschedule and remit these funds so that they can try to keep employees. But you see, when I don't remit those funds, it's not necessarily that I give that money to Bwana Kamara, unless the command is that now remit that money to Mr. Kamara. Because you see, it's another way. I say, do not give me the money meant for this month, but give that contribution.
Let it be thought through. let it be thought through, and I'm sure that if they find merit in it, somebody will be able to.
Gentlemen, allow me to open the lines. Just take one or two views, and then we get to hear what Ugandans are thinking tonight. I have a caller online. Hello. Hello. I have a caller online. Hello. Okay, I'm going to cut that caller because it looks like he's not ready to speak now, and go to another person, and if he's ready. Okay, hello. Hello, I have a call online. All right, I'm cutting the calls because looks like you have made the call, but you also left your TV volume high, and that is sending an echo into the studio, and it cannot allow us to speak. And for that matter, we can't have a conversation. So I'm going to ask the Honorable Muhammad Nsereko to give us his concluding remark, and then after that I get Honorable Musa Chwera.
My concluding remark is simple and clear. That one, as I conclude to the nation, there are 2 points, and there are 2 valid and vivid points. On the matter that has been awash, the entire social medias of Parliament, whether there was appropriation of money, the funds that you heard of, the Right Honourable Speaker has guided that are with the Parliamentary Commission, and it will take the decision the way it deems fit. And none of us can comment beyond that. We are run by the Commission, and the Commission shall comment anything beyond that. In any case, we shall, as individuals, continue to contribute where necessary, and mainly to our health workers who have put their blood on the line, and whose contributions are not that high. But where we can contribute in form of economic interventions, I implore my colleagues here that when you go back and sit, there are better measures that we can use in order to put money into the pockets of our people, just like all other nations that have adopted the same measures. We are not in opposition of your measures. We are only saying we can make them better by creating an automatic stimulus in the economy. Necessarily, one, what we can do is address the issue of loans, the issue of social security, where you can capture a bigger group of people, put money in their pockets so that they spend. Right. In the long term, yes, of course, through the UDB, recapitalization of the UDB, these are the things we can talk about after COVID to boost production so that people can access loans for manufacturing at cheaper prices and help boost the economy. But finally, there is something. The government is talking about food, and we are talking about the unavailability of food. What can I say as an individual? We looked for, in this supplementary budget, that most of us opposed vehemently, but were defeated. And we must accept that that is what democracy talks about. Where is the investment in agriculture? If this goes on for long, and there is no investment in giving people seeds, more seeds during the planting season. We are now talking about crying for beans being at this price, and not giving incentives to farmers. You've heard Germany has had to open up to say anyone who can come and help us with supplying labor to pick up fruits in the farm, you're welcome. These were people they were telling before, you're unwelcome, you're undocumented, and now they are saying, please, if you can give us this labor now, we need you. Now, the biggest form of security is food security. I do not see it anywhere reflected
we are working on
in your budgetary proposals in agriculture.
Mohammed, we are working on that. And first of all, I know time is not on our side.
Okay, Honorable Musa Chwera,
Kamara, I want to start by thanking HD President. For any army in the world, the troops move and have high morale if their commander is confident. President Museveni, you may like him or not like him, on this one, as demonstrated. In fact, the other day I was telling people he has gone beyond just being a leader to being really a parent. Breaking down the science jargon, sometimes that scientists want to enjoy and make their profession very mysterious. To make even an ordinary man in Amuria or in a Kapiripirit understand what risks are facing us. In such a calm demeanor, I think we must salute him as a president. So for us, our lieutenants, his lieutenants, we have every reason to say we will advance and defeat COVID-19. I also want to say, particularly for people who now in the whole country, but mainly my people in Amuria, they are a bit disappointed that how can you give food to Kampala where Nsereko is and you are not bringing it to us. Please, the truth is that I'm a leader of Uganda. I'm not just a leader of Amuria. The reality is that yes, they are in pain, but for now, let's start from those which are worse off, like the group I described with zero options. They will never be forgotten. We'll always see whatever we can do when time allows us to maneuver. Now, the other one is I want to thank particularly my colleagues, the ministers who are supporting me in this process. The truth is that they have demonstrated patriotism. The Peter Gwangs, the Barrio Musis, the Benny Namgwanyas, the Betty Amongis, this team that is helping me to do this exercise. Kamara, I want to confess to you, I have been in this relief program for quite a while, but handling a capital city like Kampala, which has challenges that you all know, is not easy. But the light is now at the
I
end
hope you
of
have been to the slums, in the middle of the slum, and see the real situation.
No, I can say this without any risk of contradiction. We, those of us who are lucky to be in these positions of privilege, we drive in the city, we stay in bungalows, sometimes 11 rooms when you have only 2 kids. But until you go to Kasokoso, until you go to areas like Katanga, I can tell you, Kamara, I was invited to go and preside over a symbolic handover of food to a mother of 6, and I found this mother living in a place which is a meter away from a sewer line. And she has 6 very nice children. Those children, if they walk out of that shack of a house, they sit between their door and a sewer to take a meal. And they have been doing this for a long time.
Welcome to reality.
It is not, and I want to use this chance to tell those of us who are in positions of privilege that the reality is there are people out there who need our services. And they need our services. Maybe this could be a wake-up call to
Honorable Musa Echweru, we thank you very much. Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, we thank you very much. And all of you, we thank you for your great company. I know Ugandans were in distress. The world has never seen something like this in more than 100 years. So, of course, everybody is scared, everybody in distress. But I think if we follow the guidelines given by the head of state and also the Minister of Health, I think Uganda, we can beat this. And I know some people have recovered from COVID-19. Let us not stigmatize them. Let us accept them in some way, because if we continue stigma, those who are sick and those who are in quarantine, if they are left out, let us show them love, because we have done this before. This is not the first epidemic to hit us. We have seen Ebola, we've seen HIV, and Ugandans have always come out stronger. But also, to the Minister of Health, if you're trying to save lives, also try to save the livelihoods. Good night, and God bless Uganda.